Om. Om. ॐ ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतं भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ॐ समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ। सर्ववेदान्त सिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya started this text by telling us the rarity of the human birth. The reason to make us aware of the rarity of this birth is to make us understand how precious it is. It is very rare. It is not something that the jivas get easily. So it is very precious and therefore it should not be wasted. We have got this chance. We have the chance to liberate ourselves from this thraldom of change, from this thraldom of sansar. And the importance of the human birth is that only through human birth can we get liberation. Liberation is not even possible for the devas in the heavens. They have to come back into the mortal body. That is the importance. So if human birth itself is rare, obviously a guru is rare because the birth is rare, and then in those people who have the human birth, there are very few who aspire for this knowledge, and there are even fewer who gain the knowledge. So obviously the guru also becomes very, very rare. We were also, Bhagavan also told us the futility of karma, because we are very much into action. We are, most of us are action oriented. And in the material world, yes, without action, there is no success. You cannot get anything. But in the spiritual world, action cannot take us to the final reality. And we have seen the reasons, because there are only 4 things that action can do, and they do not apply to Brahman or Atman. So karma becomes futile, but it cannot be given up either, because it is required to purify the mind. So karma has its importance, but also it is not that important, in the sense it is not a direct means to liberation. So only doing karma is not going to help. It needs to be converted into karma yoga for the purification of the mind. And once the mind is purified, then the seeker will start developing certain qualities of viveka, vairagya, shat sampatti, mumukshutvam. We need not have 100% of these virtues to start the studies. We start the studies, and simultaneously as we study, we will develop these qualities, because we will hear about it and about them in satsang. We will know their importance. And when we follow what is being told, what we will experience is the peace of mind, the quietude of mind. It'll change. The mind will change. Physically, there will not be any difference, but the mentally mind will change. And that will tell us that this is the correct thing to do. So the qualifications of a fit student were described. And then when the student comes to know the importance of this knowledge, then he is going to go look for a guru, because Shruti says that this knowledge has to be heard, and mananam, doubts have to be removed, and then meditated upon. So for Shravanam, it presupposes a live guru, and a guru whom we can ask questions to, genuine doubts, whom we can serve, because that service also gives us purity of the mind, with whom we can attune our minds to. This is something we cannot do with a CD or a YouTube video or a book. So for that, the guru is required, and the student will go try and find a guru. There was a question whether we go find a guru or whether the guru finds us. When we are absolutely ready, those type of thoughts will arrive, and we will turn towards that guru. Like for us, we turn towards the mission. People have gone and done the course, etc. Not that the guru is just roaming around here, but the guru also is looking for a good disciple. Then we were told the qualities of a guru. That also we were told, who is a Kshotriya, who is a Brahmanishta, who has who is established in verse 33. We were told, who is established in the truth, and who is an ocean of compassion, without any, just because there is no purpose for him being kind and compassionate towards us. And then this student who is now fit, he asks, he approaches, and then he wants to ask the question, and that's where we were on verse 35. we're going to do. So in verse 34, he says that worshipping that guru with deep devotion, he finds the guru, he worships, he has devotion, and then when the guru is pleased with the service, with the student, the guru will impart that knowledge. It is imperative for the guru to impart the knowledge. If the student is fit, no spiritual guru will refuse to give the knowledge. In the material world, the teacher can refuse. Says, no, I don't want to teach you. But in the spiritual world, and because the guru is such an ocean of kindness, compassion, even if the student is not ready, he will teach anyways. That is the compassion of the spiritual guru. Now, Swamin namaste nataloka bandho karunya sindho patitam bhavabdau mamuddharatmiya kataksha drishtya rajvyati karunya sudhabhivrashtya. O Master, O friend, of those who reverentially surrender to thee, thou ocean of mercy, I salute thee, save me, fallen as I am into this sea of change, with a direct glance from thy eyes, which rain nectarine grace supreme. The student is praising the guru. So he says that I am surrendering to you. Even in Bhagavad Gita, we see this. We see Arjun saying that, "Oh Bhagwan, I surrender to you." It's only that time when Bhagwan starts his advice, not before that. So here the student has approached the guru, this is a seeker whom we have already seen, who has examined the world outside and the world inside. So examining the world outside, he has come to know that there is no happiness in there. He has come to know that this is a sorrowful, miserable living, and I need to get out of this. And that is why he has approached the guru. This kataksha drishtya in the third line, kataksha, kataksha means a sideways glance. It is not even a direct glance. And it is said that the power of the guru is such, because he has got tapobala. What the guru has is tapobala is the strength of penance, because the guru has done a lot of penance. The guru has not just become a guru like that only. Okay, it is not like that. There is a huge amount of penance. Sometimes we see gurus when they are fully established, and then we see them traveling in trains and planes and first class, and then we forget how much tapas they have done previously, because we don't see that. Even in the case of Gurudev, his first yajna, he himself went on the bicycle and he himself had a bullhorn, and he was saying, oh, there is a Swami in town and he's going to do lectures. He himself advertised his own yajna. So from that, he had come. By the time I saw him, he was, traveling in first class plane and cars and all that. So sometimes we might mistake the guru, but the guru has a lot of tapobala. The strength of penance is there. And because of that strength, this kataksha, just one sideways glance, it is said that even if he gives a sideways glance to the student can get enlightened. This is the glory of the guru. He can do it, not that he will, but he has the power. Whether we have that power to, understand that glance, we don't know. To receive it, we don't know whether we are fit to receive it, but he can give it. So this is what the student is saying here. I salute thee, save me. So now he's begging, he is praying, please save me from this sea of change. The sea of change, sansar, is what we go in our life, up and down, in the sense we are happy one day and the next day we are not, and again we are happy and we are not. So this up and down curve that we have in our life, that needs to be flattened out. And to flatten that out, there is nothing in the material world that can help us. That flattening can only be done by this spiritual studies. And this is what he's saying, because after death, there is another birth. People think, oh, at death I will get liberated. No, you won't. Only thing will happen is you'll get another body. So I want to come out of this thraldom of birth and death, and please save me. So this is how the student has now surrendered to the guru. Durvara samsaradavagnitaptam dodhuyamanam duradrishtavaataihi Bhitam prapannam paripahi mrutyoho sharanyamanyat yadaham na jane. I'm being roasted in the blazing infernal fire of change. I'm being tossed by the cruel storms of misfortune. I'm terrified without and within. O Lord, save me from death. I seek refuge in thee, for I do not know of any other harbor wherein to seek shelter. See, the problem here is we are not even aware that we are being roasted. See, if we have a, say we are born in a good family and then we have a good education, then our life goes very smooth. Some lives go like that, they just go very smoothly. And then you get married, you have family, and then there's children, grandchildren, everything is all fine. And then when people like this read this verse, they say, what is Bhagwan talking about? Like, where is the roasting? I'm not being roasted. Why should I come? Okay, so sometimes what happens is people join the mission because they actually undergo some sorrow. And lucky are those ones who, before something hits them, they come into this path. So as and when it hits them, they are composed. But that people don't recognize. So as long as everything is going smooth in their lives, it's very difficult to turn them around, unless they themselves, by their prarabdha, they come to know that, no, this is what I should be doing. It is like keeping an umbrella before it starts raining. Most of the people, once it starts raining, then they come. And then they ask questions, why this? Now you're saying I'm not the body, but I've got so much pain. But you have to start from before. And then if you have this knowledge, Then when some calamity strikes, you will be able to bear it. You will be like the lighthouse, which is not shaken by the waves, not like the log of wood, which is going up and down, up and down. So this student, because he has examined the world outside and the world within, which we never do. If everything is going smoothly, why would I even be bothered to examine anything? My life is going smoothly. Why should I bother? This student is the one who has examined it. He has understood that no, 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 this is suffering only. Change is suffering. That's why, you know, when we get transferred, or we have to go to a new place, or we get married, we go to a new house, there is stress. Change causes stress. As long as everything is going in the same way, there is no stress. But change is the changeless law of life. So change has to be expected. You cannot say that, you know, nothing is going to change in my life. It can't be like that. Then that is not life, that is death. If nothing changes, that means you're dead. Something has to keep changing. So this one has examined. We are also not aware of the bliss that is promised. We are only used to the happiness because of. So because I have this, I'm happy. Because I want this and I got that, I'm happy. Because. So there is a happiness because of, but we have no idea of happiness in spite of. Like with or without this thing also I can be happy. That happiness we are not are aware of. And that happiness is the real happiness. That happiness is the bliss. And that is what the student is now wanting. He has recognized that there is something like that, which will keep me happy throughout life, no matter what changes come in my life. And therefore he's surrendering. Sharanyam anyat yadaham na jane. I've come, I don't know anything else. I seek refuge in thee, for I do not know of any other harbor. So I don't know anywhere else to go. And this is the only path. And now I have come to you. The next three verses are in praise of the Guru. Now he is praising the Guru. Shanta Mahanto Nivasanti Santo Vasantavallokahitam Charantaha Tirna Swayam Bhima Bhavarnavam Janaha Ahetunanyana Pitarayantaha. There are peaceful and magnanimous saints who live like the spring season for the good of humanity. They have crossed the dreadful ocean of finitude through their own efforts, and with no ulterior motives, they also help others to cross it. So this is how the gurus are, because they are peaceful, because they have reached that one without a second, that Advitiya Brahman. So where their peace, everything is peaceful until something else disturbs it. If I am the only one in the house, obviously there'll be just peace. Of course, if we have to deal with our own mind, which gets agitated. But think about it, when there are other people, when there are more people in the house, then the peace is disturbed. This Guru has reached that place where there is no one else, there is nothing else. Everything is just Brahman alone. And that's why he is very peaceful and Mahanta, he is Mahan, because he has now recognized the world to be nothing but his own reflection. In the knowledge of Jnana, he has recognized himself to be the substratum of the entire world. In the knowledge of Bhakti, he looks at anything in the world and he only sees his Ishta Devata. So basically what is happening is he is not seeing any difference between him and anything else in this world. Right now, we are rooted in differences. Every single thing we will see a difference. Tall, short, happy, sad, whatever. Every single thing we see a difference. But because he is rooted in that one without a second, he does not see any differences. And therefore he is like this spring season, you know, when spring comes after winter, it's very pleasing to the eyes, na? The flowers bloom and everything. So he's always like the spring season. He doesn't become cold in the winter or too hot. You know, sometimes too hot is not good, too cold is not good. Spring season is very, very pleasing. And therefore he's like the spring season for the good of humanity. So he is doing good just because of. And if you want a reason, who will he do bad to? because everybody is his own reflection. Why will he do bad to anybody when he thinks that this is my own? Like in my own body, do I like don't like my hand and like my leg? Like, do I have any kind of difference like that in my own body? If my teeth bite my tongue, then do I take my teeth off? No, because there's a sense of I in the whole body for me. So even if my finger pokes my eye, the same finger will rub the eye. So that sort of feeling of I he has with the entire world. So there's no way that he's going to hurt anybody or get angry with anybody or have any competition with anybody, have any jealousy for anybody. Nothing of the sort. And so they have crossed. So now he has crossed over this ocean of sansar, and he can now guide. That's why this sansar is called as bhava, ocean. So it's referred to as ocean. So we need a boatman to cross the ocean. We need this thing. Or it is also sometimes called as bhava kupa, well, where we need a rope, to come up. If we fall in the well, we need, so satsang becomes a guide, or the guru becomes the rope. Or if it is also referred to as a forest where we need a guide, so the guru becomes a guide. So this is why he himself has crossed over. The one who has crossed himself means he knows the way. One who has not crossed has only knows theory, but this person has done the practical whatever and crossed. So of course he can help somebody else, and he will. And again, there is ahetuna anyapitarayantam, without any ulterior motive. See, we will want something because we feel incomplete. This person has reached completeness. What will he want? That's why spiritual guru never wants any money, never wants even thank you, never wants. There was a brahmachari who had asked Gurudev, what should I give you? Like this thing. And Gurudev said, nothing. When you meet me, just give me a smile. So there's no expectation. See, even in the mission, when we go do the course, when means not guest students, but this younger students who go for this brahmachari course, there is no bond. They're given free education, completely free. And after that, they can just say, no, we don't want to serve the mission, because there is no bond, legal, nothing. It's just, okay, you stay here, you study. After the 2 years, if you feel like serving the mission, you can stay. And there also they have a choice. No, I just want to stay in white, I want yellow. They have a choice. And the third choice is, no, I don't want to stay with you guys, I want to leave the mission completely. Okay, then that's fine too. So that is what this is, ahetuka. There is no ulterior motive for the guru, because the guru really doesn't want anything. Then ayam swabhava swataeva yat para shamapanoda pravanam mahatmanam sudhau shuresha swayamarka karkashah prabhabhitaptamavatikshitim kila. Indeed, it is the nature of the magnanimous to help remove the troubles of others, even as the moon of its own accord cools the earth scorched by the flaming rays of the sun. So an example is given, a comparison to the moon. It is said when we don't experience that kind of scorching heat, but of course, like if you go places, Africa, India, Bombay, there will be it'll be too hot. So the sun is very, very scorching, means, and the guru is like the moon. So this sansar, it is, that's why in the earlier verse the student said, I'm burning in this blazing fire of sansar, and the guru cools down that fire just like the moon cools down the earth, which has become very, very hot because of the sun. So scorched by the flaming. So this is the nature of the magnanimous, and already Mahatman word has been used. So the guru is magnanimous because he has gained that which there is nothing beyond that, supreme, right? He has gained that oneness with Brahman. These are just praising the guru. The next verse is it's like a tongue twister. ब्रह्मानन्दरसानुभूतिकलितैः पूतैः सुशीतैर्युतैः युष्मद्वाकलशोज्झितैः श्रुतिसुखैर्वाक्यामृतैः सेचयः सन्तप्तं भवतापदावदहनज्वालाभिरेनं प्रभो धन्यास्ते भवदीक्षण क्षणगते पात्रीकृता स्वीकृताः. O Lord, thy nectarine speech, honeyed by the elixiric bliss of Brahman, pure, cooling, issuing in streams from thy lips as from a water jug, and pleasing to the ear, do thou shower upon me, who am tormented by earthly afflictions, as by the tongues of a forest fire. Blessed are those who have received even a passing glance from their eyes, accepting them under thy protection. This is why Gurudev in his commentary has written that Shankaracharya just went crazy writing poetry. This is like poetry. And then you think, wow, such a big verse and so much. So I just loved it. You can notice that Gurudev's commentary is just 3 paragraphs. And if you read the last line here, last paragraph, when we carefully open up the various metaphors and discard the literary embellishments, all it says is, have pity on me, master, and teach me the method of transcending the world and its sorrows. Such a simple line, Bhagavan Shankaracharya put it in 4 complicated lines, complicated pronunciation. He's giving metaphors. I was thinking, those who are from Bombay will know this. In our Bombay language, Mumbai language, it is called maskafying the guru. Maska lagare. Buttering. we would do this. If somebody would praise us now, it's like, this is what it is. So there's nothing to be afraid of it. He has given a whole lot nectarine speech, honeyed with elixiric bliss of Brahman, pure cooling, issuing in streams from thy lips from a water jug. All this is in praise of the Guru. Please just take me in now. Now, that's what the student is saying. So basically, it is just tell me, accept me as your disciple. That is what the whole thing is coming to. Okay. Now starts the very important verse, because in 40, now from 40, 41, he will ask 7 questions will be asked. And these are the questions that are that should be asked of a guru. It is said that there was a beggar who went to a king. He was a king, and the king said to the beggar, ask and thou shalt receive. Like, he's the king. I mean, you can ask for anything and I will give it to you. And the beggar said, oh Lord, O king, I don't have a begging bowl to beg, so can you please give me the begging bowl? Okay. Point is that if we ask any other question other than these 7 questions to a spiritual master, we are asking for a begging bowl. We just want to continue begging, and then that's it. Because these are the 7 very, very pertinent questions. And the whole entire book now will answer these 7 questions. Okay, so this is why these questions are very important. Katham tareyam bhavasindhumetam kava gatirme katamostyupayah jane na kinchit kripayavamam prabho samsara dukkha kshatimatanushva. How to cross this ocean of relative existence? Question number 1. What is to be my ultimate destination? Question number 2. Which of the many means should I adopt? I know nothing of these. O Lord, save me and describe in all detail how to end the misery of this life in the finite. Finite, anything finite is sorrow. if you want real happiness, everlasting happiness, permanent happiness, we have to aim for the infinite. Anything, because finite is going to end. So any situation, any person, any object that is giving us happiness, because the nature of the object is impermanency, it is going to end at some point. It is that is the permanent thing of an impermanent, that is going to end. That's why it is impermanent. So now when my happiness is depending on the world, which is itself impermanent, how can I be happy all the time? How can I get permanent happiness? This is what the student has realized. So he says, how do I cross over? These questions will be answered. So this is what we should be asking. Like, tell me the way, and what is my ultimate destination? Where will I get this happiness that I am craving for, that I am searching for? Of course, the answer to this is within yourself, but that the student doesn't know. So he's asking, what is the final destination? Where is the final destination? How far is it? Okay. And there are so many means told by so many people. So which ones should I be using? And the means that we know, Karma Yoga, Bhakti, Jnana, and then there is the Ashtanga Yoga as well, right? Raj Yoga. So there are these 4 methods. Out of that, which one should I follow? Which one is good for me? Please guide me in that uh, direction. There'll be more questions because in 47 he asked the proper question, 7-1. So here he has asked these 3 questions. We have started now with this thing, and I know nothing. This is what the student is saying out of humility. This is one very important point. See, there is a story of a Zen master. So a student went to the Zen master and said, "Oh Guru, I want to learn from you." So the Guru said, yeah, sure. Why don't we have a cup of tea? And he asked for some tea. So the tea came, there was a teapot and the tea was in the teapot, and then there were these 2 empty cups for them to drink tea in. And the Guru started pouring tea into one of the cups. The cup became full, and the Guru didn't stop. He continued, and the tea, overflew into the saucer. And the student was watching. He didn't know what was happening, but he couldn't just say that, why are you doing this? So from the saucer, the tea went onto the tablecloth, table, and the Guru was still pouring the tea, and finally it overflew onto the floor. That's when the student couldn't stop. So he said, "Oh Guru, the cup is full. Why are you still pouring the tea? It is overflowing, it is getting wasted." So the Guru said, "You also are full of knowledge. You think, your ego is, your mind is full. In this full mind, if I put any kind of knowledge, if I tell you, it's going to overflow." The idea is, this I know nothing doesn't mean that he knows enough to come to the Guru. That's all we need. I know enough that there is no happiness in this world. That is enough for us to know. That is how we'll approach the Guru. But if I go to a Guru, I may not say it, but in my mind, I think, oh, I know a lot, now let me see what this Guru can tell me. Then it is not going to work, because then that is the ego. So the ego is it has to be humbled. The ego has to be humbled. And that is the way of expressing that I don't know, and you are the only one that can help me. So please help me. And that is why this is very, very important. Humility is very important when we go surrender to a Guru. If we go with the idea that I know so much and let me see what else this Guru can tell me, it shouldn't be like that. Even though I know a lot, I may know a lot, I should always feel that I don't know enough as yet. That's where we will receive the knowledge. We'll be able to receive it and hold it. Otherwise, we are not going to hold on to it, because everything we're going to say, oh, I know that, I know that, I know that. So that is not good. That's why this Gurudev has very nicely put it, is not the student's dull-witted confession of ignorance, but it is an expression of modesty and devotion and reverence for the teacher. So it is humility. Okay. That's very important quality that a student must have. Tatha vadantam sharanaagatam swam samsara davanalatapataptam nirikshya karunya rasadra drishtya dadyadabhitim sahasa mahatma. As he speaks, afflicted by and seeking protection from the conflagration of the fire of sansar, the noble teacher looks at him in all pity and kindness and spontaneously bestows upon him protection from fear. So when the student is there and he has surrendered and he says, please save me from this thraldom of sansar, the guru looks at him in all pity and kindness. Pity should not be taken in the negative sense. See, when we see in Bhagavad Gita also, when Arjun surrendered and said, I am your disciple, please treat me as your disciple and tell me what is good for me. Tell me definitively, Bruhi Tanme, tell me definitively what is good for you. Bhagwan, it says, he as though smiled. No, so it's a small smile. It's not like, ha ha ha, Arjun, you are, you are such a valorous prince, and now you're crying, and you are not a sarcastic laugh, but that is what is compassion and pity. And the smile indicates, just a little smile indicates that Bhagwan knew what the problem was. Bhagwan knew um, uh, the answer to his problem. Arjun thought the problem was very, very great, but Bhagwan was very convinced. He knew very well that no, the problem is not that great, and definitely it can be solved. So this is what is meant here by pity. He looked at him, not when we see somebody who is at a lower, whatever, financial status or whatever, lower status than us, we feel pity. That is not the pity that the guru is feeling for the student. So he is full of compassion and he says, I will protect you from this fear. I will take you out of this fear. Okay. विद्वानसा तस्मा उपसत्तिमीयुषे मुमुक्षवे साधु यथोक्तकारिणे प्रशान्तचित्ताय शमान्विताय तत्त्वोपदेशं कृपयैव कुर्यात्. To him who in his anxiety for liberation has sought the protection of the teacher, who abides by scriptural injunctions, who has a serene mind, and who is endowed with tranquility, the master should pour out his knowledge with utmost kindness. So I told you already that a spiritual master does not have the choice. Does not have the choice means, if somebody has surrendered to him with all humility, he will not refuse. Number one, he must not refuse. The scriptures forbid him. Like if somebody has come to him for advice, he has to give it. And they say that in the spiritual world, the master, like I told you, the guru is always looking for disciples, and the guru is always wanting disciples who will themselves become gurus, because he is interested only in spreading the knowledge. It is not a knowledge that he wants to keep it to himself. See, in the material world, a teacher of any material sciences may not allow the student to go ahead of him, may not teach him fully that science or that art, whatever. Little bit he will hold on to. It is actually said that even Dronacharya, see, Dronacharya had Arjun, all the Pandavas and the Kauravas as his students, but also his own son was there, Ashwathama, who was studying from Dronacharya. Dronacharya was teaching all of them. And Arjun was his favorite student. Among all, everybody knows Arjun was, but even more than Arjun, he loved his own son, Ashwathama. He was attached to his own son, Ashwathama. So apparently what he used to do is he would be teaching Arjuna and Ashwathama together, and suddenly in the middle, he would tell Arjun, go get me some water to drink. And while Arjun was gone to bring the water, he would give some additional tips to Ashwatthama. That's what Dronacharya was doing. And Arjun figured it out. So apparently whenever he was asked to do any errand like this in between, he knew that the guru is now going to be telling something special. He would run and he would quickly do it and come back. That much Dronacharya was attached to Ashwatthama. So in the material, that's what I'm saying, in the material sciences, the guru might withhold something, but in the spiritual science, the guru is absolutely not going to withhold anything. He is going to pour out his entire, whatever knowledge that he has and whatever help that he can give the student, he will encourage, he will, that's why the word guru, swallow all his mistakes, everything, and always hope that the guru, the disciple becomes 2 steps ahead of me, goes ahead of me, and then continues this knowledge. So that is what is being said here, that the one who is anxious for this liberation, because already the student has approached him and said that I do want to get out of this thraldom of sansar, then the teacher who abides by the scriptural injunctions, okay, because he has obviously he's a Kshotriya, so he has mastered the scriptures. Because of that mastery, he has attained the highest. So obviously he's going to abide in the scriptures, whatever is being said. And then and then he's endowed with tranquility. He's very, very peaceful already, because we've seen that also, because he's one with Brahman. So Bhagavan says he should pour out his knowledge with utmost kindness. He will pour out his knowledge. This is an instruction for the guru, but there is no spiritual guru who will ever say, no, I don't have the time, I can't do it. He will not. Okay, so this is what is being said. Now Shri Guru Ruvacha, so the guru is now talking. Ma bhaishta vidvanstavanastyapayah samsara sindhostarane yenaiva yata yatayosya param tameva margam tava nirdishami. Fear not. Ma bhaishta, ma no, ma means in negative. Fear not, O learned one. He knows that he is learned here doesn't mean realized or anything like that, but learned enough to know that this is the right path, learned enough to know that there is no happiness in the world, learned enough to know that there is something out there which is a permanent happiness, which is a bliss, which is the bliss that I want, and that is what I want. So that's the load of that word learned. There is no danger for you. You have now come, surrender to me. There is a way to cross over this ocean of change. I shall instruct you in the very path by which the ancient rishis walked to the beyond. He's not saying, I shall instruct you on the path that I walked. See, I've realized that, no, there is no ego there. So always the guru, and I've always told you, even Bhagavan Shri Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita will say, the wise men say, this is said, this is my opinion, they say. So here also he says, there are other rishis who have walked this path, there are other people who have walked this path, and I know the path, and I will instruct you in that. So don't worry, don't be afraid. Okay? Tava nirdishami, I will instruct you. Astyupayo mahan kaschita samsara bhayanashanah tena tirtva bhavam bodhim paramanandamapsyasi. There is a supreme means by which you can put an end to the fear of relative existence. By that you will cross the sea of sansar and attain supreme bliss. An assurance is now given by the guru that there is a path. But what if somebody approaches the guru and asks for something where there is no answer, there is no solution? Then what will the student do, right? So the student is first being assured that there is a path. So that is the first faith, that we must have. That's why we must have faith in the Guru. If the Guru says that it is possible, then yes, it is possible. That's why even Bhagavad Gita, whatever instructions are given to us in the scriptures, any scriptures, or in the Prakran Granthas that we read by the spiritual masters, they have themselves followed that instruction, and they know that it is doable, and that's why it is being told to us. So we might find it difficult, and on the face of it we might think, oh man, this is too difficult, how can I do this? We must not have fear. We must have the faith that if it is being said, it is doable, it can be done. And maybe it's a bit difficult, and maybe it might take some more time for me than it did others. And that's why titiksha comes in play, that forbearance, that patience, that I will do it. So the Guru has assured the student not to worry. Okay, now he's telling, Vedantartha vicharena jayate jnanam uttamam tenatyantika samsara dukkhanasho bhavatyanu. The highest knowledge arises from the sincere contemplation upon the meaning of the Upanishad mantras. By this knowledge, immediately a total annihilation of all sorrows, born of the perception of change, takes place. So the highest knowledge is the knowledge of Brahman, the reality, the supreme reality, which the student is looking for. And it comes through a sincere contemplation upon the meaning of Upanishad mantras. Contemplation is thinking, and yes, thinking also is an action, but it is not a gross action. So already we were told that actions cannot give us liberation. So actions in the outside world, actions from through the physical body, those are the actions that cannot give us liberation. But contemplation on the Upanishadic mantra, so again, contemplation on worldly matters cannot give us that liberation. So contemplation, yes, even though it is an action, it is a subtle action of the mind, but it is now in just one particular direction, and that is reflecting on the mantras given in the Upanishads. Okay, now by this knowledge, immediately a total annihilation of all sorrows born of the perception of change takes place. There are two types of knowledges in the material world, where we use this word all the time. I know this, I know that, I have knowledge of this, I have knowledge of that. The knowledge that we gain and for the goal that is to be achieved through that knowledge, there is a gap. There is a gap between the knowledge which is attained, which is achieved, and the reason for which that knowledge is attained is far away. And the simplest example is, we go to university and we get a degree, and the reason we get a degree is to earn money, to get a job and to earn money and have security for ourselves, our families, etc. But the very fact, the very day that I have my degree, is somebody going to come and pay me? Is it immediately bringing me a paycheck? Or taking that degree, I have to go apply for a job, give an interview, then if I get hired, I have to again work there for 2 weeks minimum in this country, 1 month in India, if I'm to receive a paycheck. So idea is that you get the knowledge, and then there is a gap. There is time and space that is required to reach the goal. And the reason is that goal is not with us already. It is something which is not with us, and that is what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get a job. I'm trying to get a house. I'm trying to get a spouse. I'm trying to get a child. And whatever that I'm trying to get, which I already don't have, knowledge is required, but then some action also is required afterwards for that goal to come. Whereas in this knowledge, that's why it is said, immediately a total annihilation. So this knowledge that the Guru is talking about here is the knowledge of Aham Brahmasmi. When I contemplate on the Upanishadic mantras, and contemplate means really, really deep thinking, single pointed thinking, about what has been said in the Upanishads, then I will come to know the knowledge that will arise in my mind is that of Aham Brahmasmi, that I am that Brahman. And the minute that knowledge arises, all my sorrows will end. At that very minute, there is no gap. Like it's not like now I realized Aham Brahmasmi, then I have to go start thinking about what about this person, what about that person. It is not like that. It is when we cook a pot of rice, there is just one rice that I pinch and I know that the whole pot is cooked. So that way, when I come to know Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman, immediately I come to know that this same Brahman, this same self within me is the self in all. It is immediate. There is no gap of time or place. And that is the difference between this knowledge and the other worldly knowledge that we are very familiar with. You know, I know chemistry, physics, whatever knowledges that I have, they are in the external world. And there are many, many knowledges in the external world because there are so many subjects. So there are many knowledges. And no matter which knowledge I go after, the other thing about worldly knowledge is that no matter what knowledge I go after, I remain ignorant of all the others. So if I have a PhD in one subject, I'm ignorant of so many other subjects that are out there. So there is no end to the knowledge in the material world. You get one knowledge, one subject, say you become an expert in that, something in that subject only changes. We thought, you know, atom was indivisible. That's what how we were saying. Then they said no, atom is divisible, and then it's more divisible. So you think you know something in the external world and something changes in that very subject, or there are so many other subjects that you don't know. So the knowledge, gaining of knowledge in the external world never ends. There is no end to it. Whereas in this knowledge, when you go inside within you and recognize yourself to be the self in all, that is the end of it. There is no more knowledge to be gained anymore after that. So that's why this is called the highest knowledge. Why is he saying the highest knowledge arises? Why is this highest? Why not a PhD or a master's in some subject? Because that cannot be the highest, because there are so many other knowledges that still you don't know, that you're ignorant of. So that's why the Guru says this is the highest knowledge. Shraddha Bhakti Dhyana Yogat. Shraddha Bhakti Dhyana Yogat Mumukshah Mukterhetun Bhakti Sakshat Rutairgihi Yo va eteshveva tishthatyamushya moksho vidya kalpita deha bandhat. Faith, devotion, and the practice of meditation, these are mentioned in the songs of Shruti as the chief factors that help a seeker to attain liberation. Whoever pursues these is liberated from the bondage of the body, which is a projection mysteriously accomplished by his spiritual ignorance. We have talked about faith a lot. I told you faith is always number one. Faith is extremely important. So faith that there is God, there is some bliss which is out there, which I don't know. Faith in the scriptures, faith in the Guru who is going to tell me about the scriptures, and faith in the means that the Guru is going to tell me. So I must not say that, oh, these are the means, because he already, one question was asked, which means should I follow? So when you go to a Guru, then the Guru will specify this is what you need, because what I need, some other student may not need. So it is very student specific. What is it? But faith, everybody has to have. So you have to have faith that this Guru has told me to do this, and the same Guru is telling my classmate, my batchmate, something else. Why is he being told that, and why am I being told this? This is what even Arjuna asked in Bhagavad Gita. He says, why are you asking me to do karma when Jnana Yoga is the direct method to knowledge, liberation? Why should I be doing karma? Because that is what you're fit for, Arjun. So this is how the good. So that faith has to be there. Devotion, love. I told this also, we have talked about. If I don't have love for the path, for the knowledge, I will not stick with it. That is the main thing. If I don't like something, I'm going to stray, and at the first obstacle I'm going to be going away. But if I really have love for that, for that knowledge, I will develop the patience. I will have patience because I have so much love that even whatever obstacles come, I will have the patience to overcome them. Devotion. And then finally, the practice of meditation. Meditation, nididhyasanam, is finally, because in meditation, it's in there, the mind is made single pointed and focused on that one thought. And in Vedanta, it is only aham brahmasmi, can be soham. Uh, Anything which is telling you that you are that supreme reality, any thought, any which way you want to do it. So that meditation ultimately becomes very essential to actually remove all the wrong notions. Shravana that we do is to remove ignorance. Mananam is to remove doubts. And Nididhyasanam or meditation is to remove this erroneous notion that I am the body. So this I am the body notion is a thorn, and that needs to be removed by another thorn, which is Aham Brahmasmi. It has to be replaced. But then when I remove that one thorn, I don't hold on to the second thorn, I drop it immediately. So this Aham Brahmasmi, when I concentrate just on that one thought, Aham Brahmasmi, only Brahma remains, only Aham remains, and everything else disappears. And that Aham is Brahman. That is why this is said. So these are mentioned in the songs of Shruti, songs of Shri Bhagwan Shankaracharya's words. So means the Upanishads. Shruti here, Upanishads. Upanishads are part of the Vedas, and as the chief factors that help a seeker to attain liberation. So these are ones. And then whoever pursues these, so stays steadfast on this path, he will be liberated from the bondage of the body. The bondage is because of the body. It is not, it is because of my identification with the body. It is because I think that I am the body. That is why bondage arises, which is a projection mysteriously accomplished by his spiritual ignorance. Bhagwan himself will later on explain this projection. That is what is known as Maya. But Maya is a big topic. It will come. Bhagwan will himself explain. Om Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimahishah Gobrahmanebhya Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Kale Varshatu Parjanyah Prithvi Sasya Shalini Desho Yam Kshobarahita Brahmana Santu Nirbhayaha Om Sarvesham Swasti Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ओम असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेव अवशिष्यते ओम शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम।